G'day, today we fit both clutches and the right side cover. This is the centrifugal clutch. They call that the driven gear, but it's really the centrifugal clutch cup, if you like. Now, this is the one off the 94, which was the blown engine. First look at this, the burn marks on there tell me that the clutch is probably buggered. The next thing I notice is the actual Sprag clutch in the bottom is locked up. That's not to say this is completely buggered. It may be that it could be dismantled and the Sprag clutch can be taken out, but I don't really have any need to worry about that at this stage. This is the clutch material. There's very little material showing past the edge of the metal on this. I think there was still some there. They say that the wear limit on this is when the grooves are completely gone. Well, you can still see a little bit of evidence of some grooves on there, but yeah, I wouldn't be using that one again. Wouldn't consider using that one again. I've cleaned up the other one of these at this stage. I haven't put my one of these in the Kero, but I can see there's a little bit more meat on it. So the whole clutch basket arrangement on this bike, I haven't looked at it yet. I probably should take it apart and just look at the clutch friction material just to see, like, it might be that it was replaced recently and there's more friction material on those than the other. I will do that comparison. I've been looking in the book, 2.4 millimeters or something is the wear limit on the friction material. Look, this is complete, but I'm thinking that because of the condition of that, there's a good chance the manual clutch is buggered as well. This is the crankcase cover that I will use, only because it's the one that's come off the crankcase castings that I'm using. So this is the 94 right hand side cover, clutch cover, and I need to clean that out and make it usable for covering up whatever clutch components I choose to use. So these are the centrifugal clutch parts I'm going to use. That's the inner race, which is splined to the shaft. The surface of it seems to roll easy inside the Sprag bearing. The Sprag bearing really relies on the surface inside the cup there as the surface that it grips and doesn't grip. I think it just rolls freely pretty much around that inner surface on this collar. Those two bits go in the end there. They're the bits that are jammed up in that other one I just showed you, and I suspect they would knock out and possibly free up. I've given this centrifugal clutch centre a bit of a clean. You can see it's got maybe 2 millimeters of material showing over the edge of the metal there, and the grooves are fairly evident on it. So there's a little bit of wear still available on that, because the wear limit basically is when the metal rubs the cup. The actual wear marks inside the cup are fairly significant. You rub your finger up and down those. The book says it should be smooth, or no scratches at least. There's no scratches in there. It's just the where the friction material's been rubbing. The lines on there are quite evident. That's all good enough to try. At the end of the day, if If it needs replacing sooner rather than later, it's just a matter of taking the side cover off when the engine's in the bike. I'm just going to fit those bits together and sit it on there. It's got to be removable again for when I'm putting the clutch pack in, but at least those bits are clean. The book says this clutch material should be no less than 2.4. I am actually getting over 2.8 or about 2.8, and the spec says that standard is between 2.7 and 2.9. These friction rings for the manual clutch are well in spec. I'm individually washing each of these, and I will reassemble it. I've got most of the wash parts sitting up there ready to put all of these friction discs and things back into it. I wondered how much running one of these friction plates could have had when all of the lines on there are running straight across on that side. They all show that. This side looks flatter but not scuffed, and there's just very little indication of any radial lines on there that would have worn because of the friction material running on them. Now, all of them in the pack are like that. They're all positioned the same way round. I'm building up the stack over here and just placing that on there. All of these rings, all of these actual friction rings, are measuring around 2.8 millimetre, and the wear limit's 2.4, and the standard size is between 2.7 and 2.9. So maybe I've got effectively a brand new clutch here. It's amazing what you find in the Chook shed, because so that stack of parts have gone together like that. The centre pump marks around this way, so they go together, oh, not like that, but centre pump marks lined up as per the book. It goes together like that, and all of these edges need to be lined up to drop into the basket. All appears pretty bloody good, so I'm going to drop that into the basket there and screw it on. Yeah, almost ready to button this side up. I just spent time cleaning up this side cover, which is the 94 side cover, and one of the things that's become apparent as you turn that, it raises and lowers, and that it puts the pressure on the end of this shaft to push down to activate the clutch, and the lever here clocks backwards and forwards with the gear shift. Yeah, you can see the difference in the size of the balls. 3 slots there versus 3 hollows to suit this one. So that's a difference in the engines, and I'm going to choose to use this later, newer one. This case is cleaned up pretty well. I'm just going to sit it on there roughly for a look. Was totally covered in crap, as I said earlier on in my videos. It's almost like you'd almost think it was bloody sand and cement stuck to the surfaces of these casings until you wash them off and give them a little bit of a wire brush. So it's come up pretty well. I'm going to take this inside and cut out a grey gasket for it. I've got the original, I've got a new Suzuki one. I just want to make a template. Again, it's the internal shape that you can't trace effectively. Just making the point again that I can trace the outside of this casting, but what shape is the gasket when it goes over parts like this? And you can only see that from an original. The cutouts here, the thickness here, this little dimple here, and the width of it around other sections, quite wide around here, when really it's only thin there. It's only from the original gasket that you get that information. Traced an outline off the actual casting, laid the real gasket on top, and you actually have to make slight adjustments when you're doing holes up this end versus holes down that end, because this gasket will have slight distortion, as good as it is, and it did go on the other casting very well. You know, it's only paper and it can move and flex. So the only thing that doesn't move is the actual casting, and getting the original outline on this grey paper off the actual casting and then overlaying the real gasket and marking all the details for the centre is a good way of, next time when I need a gasket, I've got a pattern to work to. I've just been removing old gasket from this casing. I often find that just a bit of a burr on the end of a steel rule will, or a sharp edge on the edge of a steel rule to get, you know, the surface should be near perfect. When it's ready to apply, I just warmed up the case. That bearing fell out with a couple of taps on a block of wood. Also removed base from there, just so I can clean it and under it. Taken the two screws out of here to blow a bit of air through those oil galleries. I'm finally ready to put this right hand cover on. I've removed this triangle, cleaned under it. I removed that bearing, cleaned it out, cleaned out the oil galleries tucked on the outside. New gasket in place, dowel pins in place, tightened the big nut on the top here, put a little bit of oil on the spigot there so that it lines up when it's got to line up. This here has also got a little posi in the case there, put a bit of oil in there and a bit of oil on there so that they run together. It's now time to flip it over and lower it on. It's as usual, it's a two-handed job, but it's gone on partially there. There it is, bang, beautiful. So I've been polishing up all of these nuts, bolts. This cover was half black painted. I thought, oh, that's the one off the other motor, but I noticed the sole side cover on the other motor, the earlier motor, is black, and then the oil cover's black also. So it was paint's not that sticky, so it little bit of a buff on the wire wheel, cleaned it all up to silver to match everything else. Odometer sender goes on here and it needs a new gasket. I'm going to go in and make one from scratch, try and use what's left of this one as a template. That's my homemade gasket on there. I think this is ready to go in. Just like that. And some screws around it now. Somebody asked, how tight do you tighten these screws? And my answer is you snug them up. I'm just using a 1/4 inch drive with an 8mm socket there. Barco kit is one of my favourite tools. I'm getting a bit of leverage on that screwdriver to tighten it up, but I'll then use a little ratchet to give me a fraction more torque on that. And you know, I'm not applying much at all. You get a feel for 6mm sockets in aluminium, for 6mm screws in aluminium. We're all working on Suzuki's made in Japan with metric kit, so yeah, the book probably has a torque. I think there's a general spec in the front of the book about 6mm bolts, and you know, we're talking, I don't even know what the number is, 4 foot-pounds or something. Odometer sender's bolted down, Loctite, just medium Loctite on the threads. This is a new oil filter, and there's an O-ring in the bottom there. Opening pushes up onto. I've replaced that just with one out of my stock. So that's ready to go on, and the cover on. Tightened up sump plugs in readiness for tipping oil in when I get round to that. Okay, next job is to install a rear seal into here. I've got 3 here to choose from. One of the ones, why I haven't got 4, is one of them had a tear on this lip on the outside there. And this one, that lip is fairly stiff, whereas on this one, you can see my finger is able to just bend that. So that one's more pliable. This one's also quite pliable. So they're the 2 I'll use. You can buy seals that don't have that lip on there. They're cheap, $3 or $4. But I don't know that you can buy these Suzuki ones, or you may be able to, but you got to buy the genuine part, I believe. So I've got 2 decent ones. My theory is that this 94 engine had new seals put on it when it had, I think, new universal joints put on it. Given the condition of the clutch in this 94 bike, I think the bike's done a lot more than the 1,700 kilometres that the odometer indicated. I think it's probably done as much or more as the spare engine. And but along the way, it got new rear uni joints and I think new seals. Okay, that's the seal fitted there. The seal needs to be pushed in by something fairly thin wall. That there was close. Goes around the lip in the middle, but was a bit tighter fit. Wasn't actually pushing down inside there, and it needs to go down inside there. So I turned an edge off that, so that I used that to press in it. It's a shitty bit of old pipe or something. Ended up made it a bit too thin, but it worked. It didn't take much pressure at all. So I'll push one in the other side. I can't see that there's anything else much I can do on this side, taking advantage of it being tipped on its edge. I think I will turn it over, take this board off it and sit it upright and see what else I can work on to finish it off. I know there's a seal to put in the other side. I think there's also the recoil starter stuff can go on the other side. There's a bolt in here that just goes into a little standoff on the side of the case that was sheared off with probably about less than 2 millimeters showing on top of the aluminium casing. I've put a large 6 millimeter washer over that 2 millimeters of the bolt and put a spot of weld on. I've only got TIG here, so the heat of the TIG not only welds the washer to the bolt, but it also heats the bolt, the end of the bolt probably to red hot, and down the shaft of the bolt to red hot, with a little bit of spray of the yield stuff that I've got as well. The expansion and contraction there means that the yield can get in and potentially release it. Now, quite often you weld a nut on. Tried a nut first and it just came straight off. I tried this washer, wiggled it backwards and forwards, and I've had success. I can get it to move a little bit. I'll now work it all the way out and I'll end up with a nice tapped hole with a good thread in it, I believe. So there's that sheared off bolt with the washer welded on it. The last part of the unscrewing of it, I put some oil on it. But that's my washer. I blew a hole in the washer while I was trying to weld it on there, but it obviously got a good enough grip on the threaded section and it's wound out. The actual thread in there is still good, and this little standoff here, I don't know whether it's part of the reversing bracket mount or whether it's just part of an exhaust. I know that one there's an exhaust one, so maybe this is the bracket here that holds the cables for the reverse and the gear shift. This one here is the sub-transmission. But anyway, that's a bolt removed. With a little bit of pissing around, by the time you set up the TIG welder and things, it's the best part of half an hour. Well, the crank rolls over quite nice. My little cable tie rig to keep the chain organised works pretty good. I've got the neutral switch, the reversing switch and the reversing detent in place. I haven't got the thermo switch for the thermatic fan in place. That needed to be out to get it into the frame, so I'll leave it out for now. Got it sitting up on my crankcase dismantling blocks. Makes it sit fairly horizontal, even though it's got a very uneven base on it. So next jobs, starter motor's one of them. It probably needs pulling apart and a thorough clean up. And then obviously the top end. I'm a little worried at the moment. I can't see that I've got chain guides. If I haven't got chain guards, I might have to buy some. Still plenty to do. Get out to your shed and have some fun.